These are the Senegal doves. One of the things I found that was kind of odd to me is I try to keep 5 breeding pair in here. Right now I think I'm down to just 4 and a spare female. But as they produce young, if I let the population get upwards of 14 or so in here, their product, I mean, they just, right, they'll lay eggs, but the eggs won't be fertile at all. And I can take the population back to 8 to 10, and it'll come right back up. It's been interesting just as a study. They're called Lapica. I like these guys too.
Yeah, that's nice.
They're kind of somewhat an interesting bird, but I tell you what, they can be extremely pugnacious with one another. You think of doves are supposed to be peaceful. These guys will change that a little bit.
So, you know, you talk about birds that, you know, no longer breed or whatever, and that's where our conversation left off a second ago. What we tend to do is we'll leave a bird that typically lays in 1 year. We'll leave it for like 3 years in the same aviary. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't do anything by then, it gets moved to another aviary. Whether it's you know, even if it's an aviary that's identical to it in our eyes, sometimes it triggers it.
Yeah.
And then if that doesn't work, we'll move it to another aviary. You know, we'll give it a year or two, mm-hmm. and then move to. But we're not quick on moving birds from aviary to aviary. What we did, we had some Rajah Shelducks down in North Carolina for 9 years now, and they never produced. So we started them off in regular, breeding pen, nothing else in the aviary. So I finally said, the last few years, I finally said, well, I'm just going to put them into a mixed aviary with 30, 40 other birds. So moved them down there, and then a couple years down there, they didn't do anything. I said this year, about a month and a half ago, I said, well, I'm going to move them back up into a separate pen. And 2 weeks ago, I was down there, and I looked, and I noticed the hen was heavy. Well, she's sitting on a clutch of eggs now. So,
good. So that environmental stimulus is what?
And that's all it is. 99% of the time, if you don't have birds doing something, you need to give them a couple, because they might take a year off or something, or a couple years off even. You don't ever know, but I always give them a couple of years and then move them. On the other hand, if I have a pair of birds that produces in a pen, I'm really hesitant to move them because
till it tapers off.
Yep. That could just turn them right off. That could be the end of them.
If it's not broken, why fix it?
Yeah.
And these are all ringnecks, but there's a tangerine pied.
Where do you get pied on that?
Well, you see all the white that's in the feathers. It's not a good one, but there's white in it. I don't like them. You see that one over there, regular pied. But I like the white ones, is what everybody seems to want, so.
You make a lot of money for doing magic.
Yeah. Yeah. But everybody likes the white ones.
So
the babies.
These are all the babies, or do you use?
No, these are all ringneck right now in this round.
But you use them for
surrogates.
Raising other stuff.
Right. I'll use them as surrogates sometimes.
All the species you have, or just specific?
Mainly the green wings. The pair of green wings that I had they've been infamous for sitting an egg for about 3 days and then just quitting. So I would check if I saw anything, I'd bring them and try to put them underneath an active hen here. And I found that they would hatch them. I'm hoping the green wings are beyond that because they sat the last clutch and hatched and fledged a baby.
So the young birds? They're young birds?
Well, no. They're 4-year-old birds. They just,
need some practice.
They didn't get the parental handbook, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
so what has always amazed me is, you got birds in the wintertime that with full feathers, and you need lamps on them, and then these things, it's like 40 degrees
right,
out.
and they're there's no feathers at all on them. And there's 2 over there now. You see that male sitting right now. But this mom, she feeds them, but she's not sitting them after this point. And
she's getting child support. So
right. But they all seem to, they seem, as a community, they take care of these young ones. So it's like, okay. you were asking after the feeders. I use 2 different distribution systems. The PVC pipe over there, I have red pigeon grit in. A lot of the doves will use that pigeon grit. It's got minerals and vitamins, and it's oil and just grit that's rolled in that.
I want to say treats.
Yeah. The other feeders, I had a bunch of PVC fence post covers.
Yep.
And I hate throwing stuff away. I hate it. So I made feeders out of it. I took and cut them, and I'll show you one in a minute when we put our hands on. I cut them and fashioned them, and they seem to work very well. I can fill it up, and I know I've got food there for a couple of days.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
I just cracked the joke about the treats.
Right, the treats.
I want to just get back to the feeds.
Right.
What are you feeding for these things mostly?
On the doves, most of the doves get a dove mix. It's all small seed. There's a brand that makes a mixture called Pigeon Candy, and it doesn't have maple peas or anything like that in it.
So it is treats.
Well, it's
so you're not just mixing stuff up just to look pretty and stuff like that.
I buy formulated feed. And the doves, most of the time during the year, I'm shooting for about 10% protein. This time of year, the reason I go to the Pigeon Candy is it's 13%.
And that's what pigeons need, is 13%.
Well, I think they need it this time because they're in heavy production. Because pigeons.
And what percent fat do they need on that?
That's a very good question. One that I'm sure I could look up the answer. I don't know right now. I just know that this time of year I try to go to the other feed because
we've had a lot of discussions, you and me and Rich, and like a lot of times people be just like, we got to pump the protein.
No.
And the problem is, you put too much protein to the birds. There's other associated problems.
Right.
It's,
well, there are deficits that come about when you raise protein.
Right. But then the other thing is, like I asked the fat because that's something obviously if it's a commercial feed, they're balancing that properly.
Right.
But a lot of people don't realize that if you don't have the right amount of fat in there too,
Correct.
then you're using the protein. The protein's being metabolized to produce energy.
Correct.
And that takes more energy to metabolize the protein. Then you have less protein available anyway.
Right, the what I call consumable protein. Yeah. The one thing I've noticed about doves and pigeons, you can go to any pigeon site, and there's 35 different blends of feed for pigeons. Mm-hmm. People seem to have their own idea of what voodoo feed works best for them, and it may be regional. I don't know.
We were actually visiting with somebody, and I'm not going to mention any names, does a lot of work in the feed business.
Right.
A lot of work in the feed business. And they basically just wrote down what they thought would be a good feed, and they're manufacturing it like crazy, and people are buying it, and the bottom line is National Research Council does research for dogs, cats, poultry, ducks, geese, chickens, stuff like that, pheasants. They've done some, and no matter if you're talking chickens or wild waterfowl, the basic nutritional requirements are the same. They're just little tweaks in values.
Right. The uptake's going to be the same.
Yep. And that's, I think that a lot of people miss that. Mm-hmm. But I'm just a really big proponent of feeding commercial feeds,
right.
And then you make like we feed our eiders and stuff like that. Do get a supplement, the catfish food, just to bring up the protein and
oils and fats, probably.
Oils, yes, exactly.
Digestible fats.
But we don't go too far off of that basic menu, because that's what, even though a wood duck isn't necessarily a Pekin duck, it's not the same.
Right, it's not domesticated.
It's pretty damn close, and it's so important, unless you actually have done the studies on it, not to tweak.
Well, that's the reason I trust like Lizzie Mae for their pigeon feed, and I just they have a blend that's like a maintenance blend, and then the Pigeon Candy is what they recommend for short beak pigeons. Now, homers and stuff like that usually have a larger feed stuff. These guys will starve to death because they can't eat it. I mean, it's big. Maple peas and all, but they would, I mean, there's probably a little bit of maple pea in there from the summer mix that they can't eat. The Senegals can't eat it. The pigeon candy blend is all small seed, and I can show you when we get to the feed room.
So, along that line of thought, as far as feed, do you give the pigeons any grit, or do you just rely on the little?
No, that's what the distribution system over there. That's all grit. That's right. That's red pigeon grit. And that,
I must miss that one. I was joking around.
Right. The red pigeon grit is basically, I think it's a granite base, and it's rolled in anise oil that has all the nutrients. And it smells like licorice.
Anise oil, yeah, but anise oil is to attract animals, but they don't have a good sense of smell, so I don't know.
It may have to do with how well it bonds.
But that'll attract your raccoons in here too.
Yeah,
you use anise oil for baits.
I use vanilla. That's what I use. Vanilla oil.
Anise oil and anise, they use it for baits and for trapping. So you're gonna have raccoons coming in.
Maybe what's happened now.
That's just interesting that they would. And they typically use granite for actual grit because it's harder than most other stuff.
Right.
And it'll persist at least for a couple of days until the gizzard.
I mean, they seem to. They eat out of it at will. They'll go to it at certain times. Other times they never touch it. But it's weird.
So, do you ever have problems with disease with pigeons? I mean, that's always like the guys that are in lofts and stuff are always struggling with trichomonas and
I've never had that issue, but this is more populated than I like this enclosure.
Well, I was gonna say like these raised pens and stuff would be not really likely to pick up stuff like that, especially when you only have a couple in each of these.
Correct.
Things. And then with these community pens where they're defecating and eating at the same place over and over.
Well, that's if you notice, all my feed stations are elevated. So all of the dove pens, if you notice, have like river rock in it.
Yep.
And that was for two reasons. I can perk down to the sand that's underneath. I hose everything down. The other thing I found is that rats don't like to tunnel up through a lot of sand and rock because the rock kind of caves in on it. So.
You were talking, you had some bait.
Oh yeah, we run around all the pens. I run bait stations for the rats. I switch my baits out between 3 different products, and I give about a 2 or 3 day period where there's nothing in the bait stations. And I do that off of advice from a person at the zoo that was combating rodents, and they said, if you use the same product over and over, rats are pretty smart. They'll learn that that's what's killing them and they won't touch it. Or they'll hoard it to a nest for a rainy day. And if you got birds, they never have a rainy day because there's always food. Mm-hmm. Since I went to that type system, the system they kind of outlined, I've had very good success with it.
So we actually had some rodent problems at our farm in North Carolina last year. We finally got rid of them. We were using Tractor Supply bait, and it didn't work. Right. Nothing was. I mean, people. Some of the rodents were eating it, but it wasn't doing anything for them. So I checked with my state inspector. She's like, "This is what we use on hog farms." So we went and we baited stuff up. We got rid of all of the mice, but then we had some rats in there. The rats weren't eating the bait. Not because they were not because they'd already, but they just didn't want it.
Right.
They had plenty of food. They had plenty of food. Right. So we ended up trapping the rats because they trap pretty easy for the most part. At least they did there.
Yeah.
So we ended up. I'm taking the greenhouse, one of the plastic sheets off the greenhouse up north a couple weeks ago. I'm like, damn, there's rats back here, which had apparently been. I kept noticing around some of the tarps, some holes. I was thinking it's rabbits, but I'm back there because rabbits do that too. Yeah. But I'm back there. I'm like, it's rats. So
you usually smell them too.
we didn't smell them, nothing, because they were like on the backside of the greenhouse. We didn't see them, but as soon as I took that plastic out, they start spreading around. They're spreading around the farm. So we put out bait. They didn't touch the bait. Put out bait stations with peanut butter on the traps and cashews, and they didn't touch it. She started putting donuts in live traps, and they're going after donuts and live traps.
I was about to say little honey buns, the mini honey buns. They go nuts over there.
Yeah, that's about what she's feeding them right now. It's like this real sweet.
We've been using a soft bait as our third.
So the rats like soft bait better than they do hard bait, I think.
They go after this revolver a lot better than the hard baits, is what I've noticed. And then there's a liquid, and I mix the liquid with Mountain Dew.
Oh, you're talking about the fly bait?
No. There's a liquid rat bait, and I mix it with Mountain Dew, and they seem to go.
Really? Because you used to mix the.
I used to.
What was that stuff called?
Golden Mare.
Yeah.
Golden Mare. Yeah. We don't do that anymore.